What is the latest news surrounding Cowboys cornerback Kelvin Joseph, and can Trevon Diggs repeat his All-Pro season? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, training camp is here. How you doing, buddy?
Good. But as per usual every year, right? The first week of training camp is a lot of excitement, a lot of bluster on our part. Not a ton going on, really, other than people signing up, showing up and getting their hotel rooms and kind of doing glorified walkthroughs. So football is here. Football has arrived. Training camp is here. But it is going to be a little bit of a wait before we start getting actual good, solid football information. But I am excited because, it's basically, it's like Christmas Eve, I guess, a little bit. What's the equivalent?
It's like
here?
the first day of school, right? It's like syllabus day.
Okay.
You don't really have a lot of homework. You're not doing a lot of studying, but you're learning about where your classes are at, where your locker is at. That's what I compare it to.
That's fair. I think it's a good comparison.
So we're going to continue with our training camp preview. I know we've taken a couple of weeks off. You and I have been on vacations a little bit. Sorry, we've been on trips. There's a difference.
Yes.
We'll talk about that at a different time. We've been on trips, but we're going to talk about the Cowboys cornerback room, and we've got some news that actually happened, last week at some point. But according to Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com, Kelvin Joseph, who was involved in a shooting back in March in Dallas, which we've talked about a couple different times, he has been cleared by Dallas County officials. Doesn't seem like anything legally is going to happen here. Doesn't mean that he couldn't be suspended by Roger Goodell in the NFL, but we had a feeling some news was eventually going to come out of this, and now we have it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was a little bit kind of disorienting because, I think a lot of us had assumed that this would already had taken place. I mean, we just hadn't heard anything, about the police. They had already made an arrest for the actual murder and had a suspect. And then we didn't really hear anything about Kelvin Joseph. So to kind of get some sort of, and honestly don't even know exactly how official this is, but any kind of notification that it seems like that the police are no longer viewing him as a suspect or as a person of interest. I think that's, a good sign for at least the legal side of things, for him being kind of put to bed. Now, obviously, with the NFL and with Roger Goodell and with the new, punishment system that they have in place, it still very much has to work through those organs, I'm sure. So we may not have heard the end of it, but I think that the obviously the most problematic, the most troublesome part of this, the legal side, seems to be at least kind of finished with him for now.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kelvin Joseph gets a hefty fine and maybe a 1 or 2 game suspension. Like, that's probably pretty likely. It's not going to be a super long-term thing. He might miss week 1, or he might not even miss a game this season. We've seen this before where the NFL is really slow to move on these things, and he might be suspended for a game next year or later on in the season. So we'll see. We are talking about the Cowboys corners today, so we might as well go ahead and start with Kelvin Joseph, who was a second-round pick last year with the Cowboys. I don't want to call it a panic pick, but it was pretty clear like the Cowboys wanted Trevon Merrick, the safety from TCU, and once he went off the board, the pick right before them, they needed a cornerback after Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn were off the board in the first round, so they took a chance on Kelvin Joseph. What are you expecting here in year 2?
It's hard to know. I mean, he's an incredibly talented player. I think that much is certain. Obviously he came into the league being drafted where he was because he's had I don't know that I would call his previous issues to this off-field issues as much as kind of just disagreements with the coaching staff, not seeing eye to eye about stuff. He's had problems. He's had, coachable problems.
Mhm.
So there's definitely a reason that he left LSU originally. But at the same time, his talent also was able to get him back into another SEC school. So, and then, kind of summarily dismissed by that coaching staff when it was time for him to go to the NFL. So there is something there with him and the off field. I mean, again, not off field, but this is an off field thing. But
Yeah.
there's something there with a maturity level.
That's the word
Kelvin
I would use,
Joseph.
maturity, right?
And I think that's really going to be the kind of thing that holds him back if he's going to get held back, because he has just talent oozing everywhere. His athleticism is perfectly aligned with what you want as a cover corner.
Mhm.
He's got all that in spades. I think the matter is he going to take his opportunity seriously to develop himself, to grab this brass ring? He has a great opportunity, again, way more so than last year, to take this starting job. And he has a chance to put this off-field stuff behind him and kind of really take that job and really turn into an incredible player, because he has that kind of talent. The question is, can he, does he have the self-discipline to kind of do what it takes to do that? And I think we're going to learn a lot about Kelvin Joseph, the player and the person, I think, coming up in this training camp.
I think we'll have a pretty good idea where he's at by the end of August, right? Because, man, it's so hard because I'm trying to say the right thing here, but it seems like there was a lot of problems even last year in Dallas with maturity, maybe not showing up on time, maybe sometimes being a little bit confrontational. He was in the doghouse for a lot of the year last year. I know he dealt with some injuries and some things like that, but I don't know if the Cowboys coaching staff completely trusted him. So going into year 2, how much more faith do they have? Do they have any more faith? I don't know. I think if he has a strong training camp, he can stay on the field. He's an X factor for this defense, but Landon, he's almost somebody that I'm not like relying on or thinking about like, hey, they need him to be excellent. It's kind of like, hey, if he's there and he plays well, great. But they don't necessarily need him to be good or to be great in order for the defense to be successful.
The good news is, as we'll discuss here for the rest of this podcast, is that the Cowboys actually have themselves set up really well at the cornerback position. They have a lot of depth. They have guys that they can rely on at the first, second, and third position. They don't necessarily need Kelvin. They're not relying. They're not relying on Kelvin Joseph. Right. Kelvin Joseph is a potential, elevator from this floor. I think right now, if Kelvin Joseph wasn't even on the roster, you would be okay. It's not like it's going to be.
They had like a top 5. They had a top 5 defense last year without him really playing, and they didn't lose anybody in that cornerback room.
No, and they have gained a couple of the rookies, and you've got some other guys that have you got another year of experience. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is a cautionary tale for Kelvin Joseph more than anybody, is that this team is not in a spot where they need you. So if you are going to be a problem, they could easily find a way to kind of they could move on. Or at least
it sounds weird, but like, let's say Nashon Wright is just really good in camp, right? And you've got Anthony Brown, you've got Diggs, you've got Jordan Lewis. That's 4 corners right there. I mean,
what if Bland starts pushing? What if some of these undrafted guys that they like start pushing?
And CJ Goodwin is going to be one of that, the bottom corners. So that's already 5 corners. Like, I think he's going to make the roster. Let me just be clear.
Absolutely.
But would it be totally shocking if the Cowboys just like, hey, you know what? He's not one of our top 4 corners. We're just going to move on and not deal with the headache. It wouldn't be totally shocking to me, Landon. Again, I'm not predicting that though.
I think he's run out of runway.
Yes.
Like he's kind of like I think he was given a leash, but he ate into that leash very quickly, and now it's gone. And by leash I mean leeway. A lot of room to kind of to grow up and all that. I think with this latest incident, it's now okay.
You better play well. Like you have.
It's time to show up.
Yeah,
because we're not going to save your roster spot for when we have a number of good corners behind you. that aren't going to. We're not going to have to worry about whether
Exactly.
they do something off the field. They're not going to worry about if they're showing up on time for their workouts.
If you're cornerback 4 or cornerback 5, we're just not going to put up with it. Now, if he's clearly the second best cornerback on the roster and there's still some maturity things, I think the Cowboys might look past some of it. But if he's just not really elevating or separating himself from the rest of the pack, we'll see. We'll see. It's a huge year for Kelvin Joseph, not only for the Cowboys, but probably for his NFL career. All right, let's take one break to tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to the BetOnline website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening right now. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so we talked about Kelvin Joseph and his role in this team. We should mention maybe the Cowboys all-pro cornerback last year that had 11 interceptions. I don't want to really ask you how repeatable is that season because he's not going to get 11 interceptions. Like Trevon Diggs just isn't going to do that. But can Trevon Diggs be? Can he be a Pro Bowl to All-Pro level cornerback again this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Look, I think turnovers are a stat that you're gonna regress to the mean. Like if you have an incredible season one year, regression is just something that's going to happen. Yeah. I think the thing that isn't going to change is that Trevon Diggs has an affinity and a skill for being around the football. I don't think that is going to regress. So I think the number of interceptions may regress. I wouldn't be surprised if he still had an incredible number of pass deflections this year because he just has a skill and an ability for getting quarterbacks to throw his way and then playing the ball in the air. And I think that kind of stuff, there's a reason that those kind of stats translate from college to the NFL is because those guys have a skill that they're able to avail themselves of. So I still think that Trevon Diggs is going to be around the football a lot. Whether he can convert that to interceptions at the same rate, I don't know. Whether I think where he needs to work on is kind of trying to get some of the yardage down a little bit, trying to be a little bit.
I don't even really
stickier.
worry about that because a lot of that came when games were already decided. To me, it's just the consistency of
that's
being a little stickier, making the tackles in the open field when you're kind of the last guy in defense, like just cleaning up some of the little things. And that, to me, that's what's going to make him a Pro Bowl, All-Pro cornerback to somewhere that we're talking about as this is an elite cornerback in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Trevon Diggs is because of this season and because of his ability to catch the football and attack it at the highest point, I think for the rest of his career, teams are going to be nervous about throwing the football to his side, in one way or another. So I don't know, we'll see how that effect kind of plays itself out in the regular season. But, I don't think that for Trevon Diggs is going to get 11 interceptions and then suddenly do nothing for the rest of his career. Like I think regression from 11 interceptions could mean 7 interceptions, which is still incredible, So I think that's something that we'll keep in mind. He will get better. The interception numbers may not be the same, but that doesn't mean that Trevon Diggs isn't improving because he's just such a young player at the position.
I do want to say he's only played 40 career games at corner, two seasons in the NFL, 1 full season at Alabama. He's got 17 interceptions in 40 games. Like this is just kind of what he does. Like he finds the football. Again, he's still pretty young in terms of learning the position. He's a young player in general. I think he's only like 23 years old. I think he's going to be just fine. Let's talk about the other starter, the other starter cornerback that doesn't get a lot of respect. I mean, nationally or even from Cowboy fans, Anthony Brown, who, if you just take away one game last year, the Raiders game, I thought he was phenomenal. I mean, he was so good last season, and yet this is still somebody that doesn't get a lot of respect. Do you expect him to be as good as he was last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when Anthony Brown has been healthy, he's been a good player for this team for years. And look, I wouldn't get a tattoo of a chip on my shoulder, but I get it with him,
Yeah.
man. Like,
Yeah.
he was a extremely late round pick. I'm pretty sure he's a 6th round pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And was able
192.
to
It's
kind
on
of.
his. It's straight underneath the chip on his
That's
shoulder.
right, yeah, and was able to kind of work his way up from there and get significant starting snaps in multiple years. And despite one season where he was kind of battling through, I think it was a rib injury and several other things where he didn't play his best football. I thought last year he played fantastic.
Yes.
I think if you look at what the conversation was around this team, let's say a year ago now, right? Like this time last year, we were really, really, really concerned about what this defensive backfield was going to look like because, I mean, how quickly can we get – we've got to make sure that Kelvin Joseph gets up to speed. We have to make sure that Kelvin Joseph gets to speed. We can't go into the season with Anthony Brown as our cornerback too. Anthony Brown was one of the best second cornerbacks in the NFL last year.
Especially considering how many targets he got. Yep.
He got as many targets as probably anybody in the NFL because no one wanted to throw at Diggs anymore. And the way he responded was incredible. So – I'm not gonna. I'm going into the season with an expectation level with Anthony Brown. Like I expect him to play at a good level because I think that we've seen that when he's healthy, he plays very good football.
He's a good player. I mean, what I love about the Cowboys now is that they figured out his role. Like early on in his career, is he an outside corner? Is he a slot corner? I kind of think he's an outside corner now. I think his game is just better on the outside, which leads me to Jordan Lewis, who is the better slot corner. I used to be in the camp that I thought Anthony Brown was better in the slot than Jordan Lewis. That was proven wrong last year. Jordan Lewis was phenomenal in the slot for a couple of different reasons. He's tough. He's a really willing tackler. He's a great blitzer, which is something the Cowboys probably need to utilize more. But having Jordan Lewis, a veteran slot corner on this team going into the season, it makes me feel really good about their top 3. I mean, it's hard to even talk about how much confidence I have in the top 3 in this cornerback room.
Yeah, it's shocking. I mean, compared to where we were again last year after a down season, they get some consistent coaching last year. Now they've got a second year in this same system. And my confidence level in Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis specifically is as high as it's been. And I think that it's such a luxury for both of those guys to have bounce back seasons and to be right about those players after signing those guys for the Cowboys, because now you can do what you need to with someone like Kelvin Joseph. He caused problems. Now you don't have to worry about if Nashon Wright is developing or not as quickly as you need him to, because you've got these guys who immediately can come in and play and give guys like Bland and Joseph and Wright
they can actually just be developmental guys, which is fantastic. They're not pushed to play, and that's when you're taking guys like Bland, you want them to have time to develop, and now you can.
Yeah, I think that's it's such a luxury that it's really going to play hopefully pay huge dividends for the Cowboys down roster corners.
Without looking, do you know how old Jordan Lewis is?
Is he 27?
He's 26.
I mean, he's been in the league for like 12 years, right? I mean,
this is his 6th season with the Cowboys, and he is 26 years old. I mean,
that's crazy.
I'm still not sure if we've even seen his best football yet, because it was just 2 years ago, 2020, when he finally started to see like a majority of the snaps and became a full-time starter. I mean, there's a chance that Jordan Lewis, now that going into year 6, is completely confident in his role. He kind of has his spot carved out on the roster. Why couldn't Jordan Lewis have a career year this year?
Absolutely, he could. I mean, he's again back-to-back years the same defensive coordinator. He has a very specific carved out role that fits his skill set incredibly well. So I don't think it's outside the question that he could have a great year.
I want to talk about some of the down roster corners because I'm really excited about some of them on the team. But before we do that, I wanted to tell you guys about Dave. Sometimes we get into a pinch where we need just a little bit of money, or sometimes you're having to live paycheck to paycheck because whatever's going on. Unexpected expenses do come up, but Dave can help you get out of a pinch when you absolutely need it. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That is more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or just to catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There is no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief that they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and you need some help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That is DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. All right, let's talk about some of the down roster cornerbacks. We should start with Nashon Wright, who the Cowboys spent a third-round pick on last year. And if you remember, Nashon Wright at this exact time last year was kind of the star of training camp. Like, he was having a fantastic camp, goes into the season, plays a bunch of special team snaps, doesn't play a ton on defense, but he is part of the equation at least a little bit. 23 years old, I believe he turns 24 during the season. Is it possible that this is the year that maybe he overtakes an Anthony Brown or completely beats out Kelvin Joseph in training camp?
Yeah, what's interesting with Wright is with all these guys. I mean, if you look at the list, whether Wright or maybe not as much Bland, but it's like I feel like I've heard a little bit of something about these guys, except for Wright, right in the offseason. And all during the regular season last year, and all during training camp. We kept on hearing the drumbeat with Wright. Oh, especially during training camp. He's just playing great. He's playing above. Could he take Joseph's spot? Could he be the number 2 corner? Mm-hmm. It never quite got that far. And as the season rolled around, he not unexpectedly kind of took a step back into the rest of the roster, and that's when some of these veterans start to step in and actually make themselves known. And that's when Lewis and Brown, all of them started to play really good football. But I think Nashon got his feet wet a little bit last year, got an opportunity to play some snaps on the field, not a ton, but he did get on the field a little bit in defense. He played special teams. I think this is, unfortunately, he's another guy that because of the numbers, he's really got to have a good year this year, right? It's just they ended up going out and drafting another guy in Deron Bland.
I've got more faith in him than Kelvin Joseph, by the way.
I certainly do too. It's certainly
which is just weird to say, right?
Well, I don't know that it is. Nashon Wright's not the physical specimen that Kelvin in that sense, right? He's not like the athletic specimen. Let's say that
he's not the 4.3 guy that can just run with anybody, right?
But I trust Nashon Wright based on his work ethic in training camp and what we've seen in the regular season to do the work that's necessary to get where he needs to go to be a starting level cornerback, right? That's where I have more faith in Nashon Wright.
That and he played 1 million special team snaps last year. Like, he's just going to be on this team in some role. Now, what is his role on defense? I think that's up for debate. But I just think his floor is so much higher than Kelvin Joseph's.
I think I agree with you. Like, as far as their career floors,
yeah, because Nashon Wright's going to hang around for 7 years playing at the very worst special teams and being a 4th or 5th corner.
But I'll say this: if you're talking about the floor of their play, like on a snap level, play to play, I think you could put Kelvin Joseph out there with no practice, and he's just so talented that he could go cover a guy. Like without a doubt, and not give up a huge play. Whereas Nashon Wright may spend 4 extra hours after practice, may work twice as hard, and may get on the field and at least the play that we saw last year. That's all I'm going off of, and may not be able to play quite at the level of Kelvin Joseph just because he's not physically as talented as him. Having said that, Nashon Wright, I think, is one of the guys that I would definitely put on a list for second-year breakout players, right? Guys who I believe, based on what we saw last year, that I felt like got the enough experience and has the work ethic, that his second year jump could be incredible. Like, we may come in and just be really, really impressed with what he did in the offseason, the way he's changed his body, and the way he's looking right now. So I have a lot of faith in Nashon Wright because of what we saw, how well he was able to kind of keep up with, despite a lot of hand wringing over the pick, right? And the fact that he actually proved that he did belong as a third round pick, and he has that kind of talent. So I definitely agree that I think, if you were making me put money on who is going to play more snaps next year, I mean, I think it'd probably be a 50-50 split between, I put my money 50-50 on Joseph and Wright, and that's not saying good things about Joseph, right? I think that Nashon Wright, if he can take the kind of leap that we expect from guys going from first to second year, he could be very much in the conversation for a starting job, certainly taking Joseph's spot. I mean, and beyond. I think there is that possibility because despite not having the kind of athleticism that Joseph has, he's still incredibly big, incredibly long, and he fits what this defense wants as a boundary corner.
So also mentioned Nashon Wright, another player that's extremely kind of green when it comes to playing cornerback. He had 16 collegiate games at the D1 level. He came from Laney College, the Division II school, but a junior college school. But he just has not played a ton of big time games. So this is typically when you see players take the biggest step of their careers from year 1 to year 2. He's a guy that I'm really keeping an eye on. Just a couple other corners. CJ Goodwin, he's going to make the team because of special teams. Probably not going to play any on defense. The only other corner that I really wanted to mention here, and we mentioned it a couple different times, but DaRon Bland.
Yeah.
Somebody who big, long, athletic. You can see it on tape, but doesn't have a ton of college experience either. What are the expectations for him as a rookie?
I mean, that's the thing. It was I don't know that it was a surprise that the Cowboys necessarily took DaRon Bland, but I think that it's a very crowded room at this point, right? And I think for Bland, he is a guy that when you go back and watch his tape at Fresno, right? Is he the Fresno State kid?
Yes, Fresno State.
Yeah. Like he has really good man corner skills. Like he's really sticky in coverage. It was kind of surprising, frankly, that he lasted as long as he did, just like going back and watching him. But I think again, it's a very crowded room.
It's going to be hard for him to make the roster. Like he's going to have to be excellent in camp and preseason to make the roster because just go through the names: Diggs, Brown, Jordan Lewis, Kelvin Joseph, Nashon Wright, CJ Goodwin. Are they going to keep 7 corners? Probably not.
And I think that there's other guys like I think this Isaac Taylor Stewart kid from USC is going to get some looks. That sounds like the Cowboys really like him. So there's just going to be a ton of competition all the way through this room. Like it's at the top, it's in the middle, it's at the bottom. There's just going to be guys pushing each other, and I really hope that what that means is that we're going to get on the other side of this training camp with a really tight group of really good corners because they're going to have to go through the gauntlet just to even make this team, right? And hopefully, at the end of this, even if like we get a tight group of guys that we like, there's certainly an opportunity to maybe flip one of these guys for a pick a little bit later, maybe for a player near the end of training camp, because this is a spot where the Cowboys are not only deep, but maybe, like too deep to the point where they could actually flip one of these for an asset some other spot.
We'll say the preseason is going to be a lot of fun because when we get to that second and third preseason game and you get to the second half of these games and you see somebody out there like Bland or Nashon Wright or Taylor Stewart, like playing a bunch of snaps, it's going to be really interesting to see because those guys are all NFL players. I think they're all contributors on good teams. Be interesting to see how it all plays out. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen today. Now make your second listen, the Locked On NFL podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. We'll be here all week long talking about the training camp news out of Dallas. We know padded practices don't start until, I believe it's next week.
Landon, you'll actually there, basically.
Landon will be out there. They decided to wait until Landon gets out there.
It's nice
for practice. So This is where you're going to want to be for all of your training camp updates. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can follow the show at Locked On Cowboys, and I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we'll see you guys next time.